Welcome back to the Bible. Wait, what? I got a little bit longer that time. So we're warming up.
Getting better. Hello, Jimmy. Good to be back with you again.
Yeah.
This is Wednesday.
Yes.
As you're listening to this in real time.
In real time.
Wednesday.
It's definitely not Wednesday.
Check out the previous few episodes on 2 Samuel,
Yep.
the intro, and then 1 and 2, because it's all one long narrative that we can. It's good to have it all in context.
Yeah. So we're jumping into chapter 3, and so we are now starting to see. So the civil war is going, and we're starting to see some of the rise of David, and then the fall of Saul's family, the dynasty of Saul. So, and pretty much it kicks off at the start saying that was the beginning of the long war. So that pretty much that's that snapshot. That was explaining how it all started
with the previous chapter and the fight and the killing of Asahel and all of that.
And all that stuff.
Yep, exactly.
And between those who were loyal with Saul and those who were loyal with David. So it was pretty much that north versus south. Well, it doesn't actually say that. It says those who were loyal with Saul. So and there was a lot of that talk of Benjamites pretty much being the ones that have been dying. So I
reckon there's a bit of loyalty for David hovering around, the bit of political going on in some of the towns.
We do talk about earlier the Jabesh Gilead.
Jabesh Gilead, yes. So I reckon there's a bit of that. By this stage, especially if you've got a fairly weak king on the throne, a weak king doesn't usually draw people and doesn't usually. A good king actually makes their people feel prosperous and happy and peaceful. And if Ishbosheth's not doing that, that was going to cause a degree of civil unrest. Yeah. Yeah, so I reckon that's right there. There is starting to be seeing some cracks in the Israelite governmental structure starting to appear. Yeah. And that's the contrast here. Meanwhile, David's getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, because it says, as time passed, David became stronger and stronger while Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. And it jumps straight into David's sons born in Hebron. So he's now in Hebron and he's flourishing. And not only is he flourishing and the land of Judah is flourishing, but his family is growing.
Yeah, which is what you want for a king.
Yeah.
Not everyone survived into adulthood, so having an heir for kings, and so that's why kings always want to have multiple sons.
Yeah.
So he gets
6 sons.
6 sons. That's a statement. There doesn't mean there's not daughters in the mix, but the fact is that's basically saying there is security in David's kingdom.
Yeah. So not only was it pretty much on Saul's side, you had the one son that was sort of being portrayed as weak, as not really being a great ruler, maybe a reluctant ruler. Yep. And then on the other side, you've got David, who is just drawing people into him, very much has the anointing of God, and his family is growing and he's becoming prosperous in that way. And there is this sense of foreboding that that David is just gonna it's the inevitable is that David is gonna be king over everyone.
And stay tuned because it mentions Amnon. Daniel, I don't know much about. I'm assuming maybe Daniel was the mother of Abigail, but he may have died in birth. I don't think he appears very much. Yep. But we have Amnon. Skip Daniel, then you have Absalom and Adonijah.
Yep.
So these are the 3 of the first 4 heirs to the throne. And they'll appear back in the story in chapter 12. Well, Amnon and Absalom will appear in chapter 12. Adonijah will appear at the end of David's life.
Yep.
And none of them are in a good light.
No.
So even having all this political maneuvering, trying to skewer your kingdom, these weren't the cream of the crop of sons. And partly that's David's fault for he'll ultimately sin with Bathsheba. We'll play that out in a couple of weeks in my conversation with Annalise. But but the point you're getting here is that there's a stability, at least an apparent stability of the kingdom.
Well, and that point, it's because very much, again, it's pointing to David's character and who he was and the fact that he was following after God. And maybe that's where the cracks start to appear, which is later on, where he starts to do things himself. God's anointing was still there.
But he trusted himself instead
He trusted himself a little bit more. And then probably was playing out that where his sons probably went down the path of, instead of seeing David and him following after God and following his lead, starting to maybe play off, David can sort of take what he wants, and started following down that path of, I just need to take what I want.
What I want for myself.
Yeah.
I can define what's good for me. And it says Absalom here is whose mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. So that's clearly a political marriage.
Yeah.
It's another king nearby. We're looking up who it is, but so there's stability happening, not just within David, but also beyond David into the neighboring powers around about him.
Yeah. So it's, again, for the purpose of this story here, it's good to know this and to harken back to this once you sort of read David's story going forward.
In another 6 chapters or 9 chapters or something.
But for the context in which this is in right now, for while you're reading in terms of the story that's in front of us, is that it's asserting that David's going into a place of power, becoming stronger and stronger, where it just Saul's on the other side,
getting weaker and weaker.
And we see that in this next from verse 6 onwards. So this is where so Abner pretty much is doing everything he can for Saul's dynasty. He's doing everything for the family, for the tribe of Benjamin, for the land of Israel. He's trying to do all that he can to keep stability, and then it just doesn't. He just sees that this is it. It's done. So what ends up happening? And it was like that. It must be just the straw that broke the camel's back.
I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back.
So, so in verse 7, one day, Ishbosheth. Did I say it right that time?
You did say it right that time. Ishbosheth. Yep.
That's only taken me about 15 attempts. Accused Abner of sleeping with one of his father's concubines, a woman named Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. And it's just funny. It's just like the man who's done everything for you. It's just like, even if he did sleep with not his concubines, but of his father's concubines, which I'm assuming probably then did come to him.
There's politicism.
But it's funny. It's just that. But the man who's done everything for you, to even to think that that's happening, the man who's just doing everything for you, but then just to it's like he's accused. So it's not even though he's had a conversation with him about it. It just seems like here in this point, he's just gone I don't care what you've done for me. You've done something against me, and he's accused him of that. And Abner was furious, and am I some Judean dog? So pretty much saying, am I your enemy?
Yeah.
To be kicked around like this, after all I've done for your father Saul, for his family and friends, by not handing you over to David, is this my reward, that you find fault with me about this woman? May God strike me and even kill me if I don't do everything I can to help David get what the Lord has promised him. So he knew that David had promised, but he also knew that Saul had the anointing. So he was continuing that on until
such time as it was justified, probably.
That either that the Lord had made clear that it was time for David to take over. And in his mind, he saw that for the betterment of Israel, that this leader was not the leader that they needed. The leader.
You don't need a leader who is insecure.
Yeah.
Is so insecure that he's attacking the ones who are most loyal to him. But he's seen Saul do this to David.
Yep.
And he's thinking, I'm not going around this mountain again.
He saw the writing on the wall at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And
maybe he felt like David. Maybe in that moment he started to think,
oh, this is what David.
This is what my cousin Saul made Dave feel like.
Yeah.
Dave was always faithful, and he accused him of doing the wrong thing and being unfaithful and disloyal. I know what that feels like. I feel like that right now.
Yeah.
I've done nothing but serve you, and you're treating me as though I'm an enemy.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, the difference is he deals with it a bit differently. Interestingly enough, he doesn't kill Ishbosheth himself. He's still got enough integrity to go, well, okay, I'm going to make this a smooth transition, and the best transition possible for the nation is a smooth political transition over to David.
Yeah. So he said, I'm going to take Saul's kingdom. So it doesn't even acknowledge him saying, I'm going to give Saul's kingdom. This is not even anything that you've done to deserve this. This is Saul's kingdom, and give it to David. Because he's seen that the transition, he's probably understanding the transition should have went from Saul to David.
Yeah, and it's not gone well over the last couple of years. Yep.
And I will establish the throne of David over Israel as well as Judah, all the way from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south.
Which is basically from Darwin to Hobart.
Yeah.
That's how we say it.
And then this is then the character of Ishbosheth, is that he didn't dare say another word because he was afraid of what Abner might do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a threat against him. It's not even trying to banish him and get him out of this. He knew that at that point, he knew that he had no power. He knew that Abner was the one that controlled everything.
Unlike his dad, who still had the loyalty of his men, when he was pursuing David. It's gotten so bad for Ishbosheth that he doesn't have the loyalty of his men anymore. No. So there's nothing more he can do. He better shut up or I'll be dead.
Yeah.
My men will turn on me. Yeah.
So Abner reaches out to David, and I want to pretty much saying, I want to hand over the land of Israel to you. So David replied, all right. Sounds very Aussie, that part. All right.
All right.
David replied, but I will not negotiate with you unless you bring back my wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come. David then sent a message to and saying, give me back my wife, Michal, for I bought her with the lies of 100 Philistines.
Foreskins.
Foreskins.
Is it foreskins of 100 Philistines it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't say that there, but it was.
Yeah. It's even got the little asterisk there, and I'm assuming that's going to say foreskins. Yeah.
It does say the foreskins of 100 Philistines. Yeah, there you go.
In the Hebrew.
Yeah.
We've just tidied that up there, I guess. So he
probably because it doesn't make her sound very valuable, does it? What are you worth? 100 Philistine foreskins.
Yeah. So Ishbosheth, again, it just shows where he he had again, maybe he just accepted what was going to happen at this point. So he didn't fight in any way. He took Michal away from her husband.
Yep. So he takes his sister. This is his sister.
Yeah. Away from her husband. And then said that's, and again, is that family thing where so that they technically, because they were married.
So David had married Michal, and then when he escaped from Saul, he never had a relationship with her again.
Yeah.
Probably they were never divorced, according to law.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, though, they're probably gone, well, Dave's gone, let's remarry. So she's found someone she's actually in love with, or at least he's in love with her.
Yeah.
Michal's never really painted in a really good light.
No.
But, he's found this, she's found a degree of happy marriage.
Yep. And the husband, so was it Pati? I've lost the spot now. There we go. Palti, son of Laish.
Yeah, that'll do. Laish. Yeah, Laish.
Followed her all the way through to Bahurim, weeping as he went. Then Abner told him, go back home. So he went back home. So he again, it was, and
I feel for that dude.
Yeah. And look, you understand why, Michal was David's wife. So you want your wife back.
Yeah. I don't think David's.
No.
I think this is
again that political thing. In terms of
he knows that if he's going to unite the kingdom,
that's a Benjamite now,
and that's Saul's daughter.
Yeah.
So if I take her back,
yeah,
it shows how serious I'm about reuniting the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not saying David doesn't love her, but later on, she clearly doesn't love David because later on, it's the whole story of David dancing in the streets and she's accusing him of dishonoring himself, but actually she's more worried about being dishonored herself.
Yeah.
But the fact is, this is a political marriage or a political reconstitution of an existing marriage for the sake of bringing unity to the nation.
Yeah.
And sadly, she and Palti are stuck in the middle of this.
Yeah. Again, and I suppose it's it shows that in all of this, it doesn't matter that the whole situation is just messy. It's not a clear, even though that David was God's anointed and he was following, is that there's still messy outcomes for all of this. Yep. It's nothing is very clean cut. There's no
motives are never pure.
Yeah.
And human behavior, sin causes. Anytime we say what's right for us, it's at the extent. So David's trying to do what's right for him here.
Yeah.
And there is a degree in which it's right for the nation to unite the nation, but it's at the expense of someone else because that's what sin does.
Yeah.
And we see this in history. I've often seen this when we watch. Jill and I will watch, historical fiction or historical stories about medieval Europe. And one of the hardest jobs to have in the royal court was to be a princess of a king. Because very often they'd just be shipped off to marry some old dude from a king on the other side of Europe for a political alliance. And there was no love, there was no feeling. They were a political pawn.
Yeah.
Even more so than the men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think for then the Israelites, and the reason that they leave all this stuff in the story here is to show that that we are not because someone is the God's anointed they're not replacing God. They're there they are there as the Lord's representative and to show that when God said, like, why do you want a king? Like back in, like we're in
but with
the
Samuel,
start of Kings as well. Like it's like that. Why do you want a king for? Like I'm going to show you what happens when you have a king.
We have a king that doesn't
instead of like, because you want to be like the other nations.
Yep.
Instead of being who you are and following me.
Yep.
It just shows that even David, who is seen as probably the most successful, the king that sought the most after God,
he still had his failings.
Imperfect. And then the follow-on from then David's legacy is that his sons were horrible.
Yep. Every now and then you get a glimmer of hope. No, he's not the one. He's not the one. He's not the one. And there's this ongoing hope that there will be a Davidic king come.
Yep.
Which is obviously ultimately Jesus. But we'll talk about that with Phil next week when we do 2 Samuel 7.
Yep. So... Abner consulted the elders of Israel. So then Abner then goes to the elders of Israel. So it's not as though that Abner's just done I'm taking it away, and then he also, not only does he put word out to David, then he also consults the elders of Israel.
He needs them on board.
Yep. For some time now, you've wanted to make David your king.
So there was obviously among the elders, there was obviously a bit of talk about this.
And it shows why that then it was the people of Benjamin over and over again, the ones that were fighting.
Good.
It's because it was, well,
they were holding on to their house.
I'm going to call on the family to come and do the family's work, rather than, because we know that the people of Israel don't necessarily want this.
Yeah, great. I've never seen that before. That's really good, very good, Jimmy, because I've never really thought about the fact that it would appear that there was a lot of unrest among the Israelite tribes. So this is good to slow down and talk about at this level. Thank you.
And he says, like, now is the time. The Lord has passed. For the Lord has said, I've chosen David to save my people Israel from the hands of the Philistines and from all their other enemies. And then Abner spoke with the men of Benjamin. So he spoke to the elders of Israel and then spoke to the men of Benjamin.
Yep. So Abner's doing some politicizing here, doing a bit of political work.
So pretty much going through and making sure all the people that would potentially be against or would potentially make this not happen, he's speaking to them and saying, this is what we're going to be doing.
Yep.
So he then went to Hebron to tell David that all the people of Israel and Benjamin have agreed to support him. So at this point, you think, sweet, okay, it's all looking good.
Looks good.
Yep. Yeah.
David throws him a party when he gets there.
Yeah. So Abner comes with 20 men, and then, David throws a party. They said, like, we're going to call assembly all of Israel and support my lord the king. They make a covenant, so they make a pact, a contract that you will make, that will make you the king, and you'll rule over everything your heart desires. So David sent Abner safely on his way, and it's interesting.
David sent Abner safely on his way.
Yeah.
Hold that for a second.
But then even before that, it's you will rule over everything your heart desires. So that's the first time that David's rule is something that's talking about not that God has given or God is placed on, but it's a David's desire.
David's a heart of desire for David.
So as much as David's desire is to rule over Israel because he knows that's what the Lord has called, but it's also the reference isn't to
the Lord doing it. Yes,
it's to his desire. So it could be the first mark of.
Could be the first mark of power starting to settle in for David. Could be. Or it could be that David's just always desired this, but he's also been able to surrender. Isn't that nothing wrong with having desires?
Oh, no.
Even desires for influence and leadership. In fact, it says, Paul says to Timothy, I think he says, if anyone desires to be an elder, they desire a noble thing.
Yep.
So it's okay, provided it's in the right context, which is a selfless context, not a selfish context.
But it's just interesting that that's the first time that in the whole conversation,
the whole narrative we've heard about David's heart.
It's David's heart that.
Yeah, it's acknowledgement that there is a desire there, which will ultimately get corrupted.
Yeah.
At least the story of Bathsheba, it will. Yeah.
Yeah. So Abner's safely on his way back to Israel to report that
basically
we've got a new
king over. Yeah, exactly.
That David's going to come and we're going to have peace in the land again. The Lord's anointed is going to be once again ruler over all of Israel, not just Judah. Well,
lasted about half a day probably.
Not very long. So he doesn't even really get out of the land of Judah at this point. So David sent Abner on his way. Then Joab and some of David's troops returned from a raid. So and bringing much plunder with them. So it shows that at this point that Joab is still out just doing his thing.
Joab is in it for himself. He really is. Yep. Even when he appears to be not in it for himself, if you dig below the surface, you realize he was always in it for himself.
Yeah. So when he arrived, he was told that Abner had just been visiting the king and had been sent safely away. And this is like he's just like, so he rushed to David and demanded, "What have you done, letting Abner get away? You know perfectly well that he came to spy on you and to find out everything you're doing." So then he left. So he just came and just pretty much just in a rage, just yelled at David and then left.
Yep. And Joab is David's kryptonite. David does good leadership in other areas, but something about the familial connection or something, Joab clearly thinks he can get away, and he does this multiple times. Sometimes for the right reason, like after Absalom is killed, Joab killed Absalom, which was denial, but he has this open access, and I think it's in the poem we're about to see that he basically says these sons of Zeruiah are too strong for me.
Yeah.
So he has a sense of he feels a bit at their mercy. And we all have someone like that. Yeah. We all have a kryptonite. We all have someone that can get under our skin who we can't, as much as we want to bring leadership or correction to or whatever. Basically, Joab's leading Dave, not the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it creates a mess for David.
Yeah. And then Joab, so then he just goes on his own and he sends messages to catch up with Abner, asking him to return. They found him at the well of Sirah, and brought him back, though David knew nothing about it. And then Abner arrived back at Hebron. Joab took him aside at the gateway as if to speak to him privately, and then he stabbed him in the stomach and killed him in revenge of killing his brother. So it's just it's that mess. And what Abner warned him of is, if you keep chasing me, it's just going to lead to bitterness. Yes. And
exactly what's happened.
That bitterness was there, that he didn't even ask why he was there.
No.
He just said, you were here and you let him go, because he must have been just stewing on the fact.
He's been living with a vengeance pact of some kind against Abner for a long time.
Yeah. And so again, it might be similar to what happened with Saul, where it was just sort of sitting there bubbling away, kept growing and growing, to the point where that even though that he knew that his brother was dead, that Abner killed him, that he still let them live, whether it was strategic, the fact they had the high ground, but he listened to his words and went, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
Which Saul also did to David.
Yes, a couple of times.
He said, oh, wait, no, you're right.
But he didn't deal with the issue in the heart. And, practical application time for us folks, we've got to keep short accounts. We've got to forgive. Pastor Phil says, forgive everyone, everything they ever did to me. He does it every day. Because if we don't do that, this is what happens. Bitterness takes root in our heart. And it will end up with us, not saying, even figuratively killing, but, we'll end up with this harming others who out of vengeance and out of disappointment and anger and bitterness. So we've got to deal with it. This is a classic case of where it went awry. And the implications were massive.
Yeah.
It meant that Israel, the northern kingdom, was going to have to experience another 5 years of unrest.
Yeah.
It was ready to be done. The peace that was about to ensue was about to happen. And Joab's buffheadedness and vengeance pact has meant that it just perpetuated the angst for everybody.
Yeah.
Our actions and our unforgiveness, they matter. It does not just affect us, it affects others as well. We've got to keep short accounts.
Well, and Joab brought about what Joab probably wanted, and that was to still be able to do what he wanted to do, and that was just to go out and that bloodthirstiness type thing. He's been able to sort of manifest that in that way that, all his actions keep leading it that way.
Because it says he came back with a lot of plunder. He's on a good wicket.
Yeah.
Joab, he's out there, plundering, pillaging, taking plunder. He probably thinks he's in his element.
Yeah.
But he's not thinking about the kingdom. He's just thinking about himself.
Yeah. So when David heard, he declared, "I vow by the Lord that I and my kingdom are forever innocent of this crime against Abner, son of Ner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. May the family of Joab be cursed in every generation with a man who has open sores or leprosy, or who walks on crutches, or dies by the sword, or begs for food." So he's just
using a lot of rhetoric to
just say pretty much is that just saying that all the actions of Joab in this case have nothing to do with me.
That's right.
All the people of Judah.
Yep.
It is just Joab and Joab's family alone that are a part of this. So Joab and his brother Abishai killed Abner because Abner had killed their brother Asahel at the Battle of Gibeon. So he's held on to that for a long time. So that'd be almost a couple of years.
It'd be a good couple of years, or close to a couple of years. Yeah. Well over 12 months at least.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then David again shows his character in terms of understanding who Abner was, and the fact that through all of this and Abner's actions was all to do what he thought was right in the eyes of the Lord, pretty much. And you can sort of see that his character was always to honor and respect what the Lord had placed a calling and the leadership on Saul and his family. And then the realization that had now completely passed, and then now it was time for David, because David then was the call to be the next to look after that. And he died doing the right thing. He died pretty much trying to lead the people of Israel into unity again under the Lord. You
got it.
So David then, he mourns.
He basically does a Saul and Jonathan thing. He just publicly mourns again.
Yeah. And then he sang this, and then the king. So David himself sang this song at the funeral.
And you can understand why, because I mean, the Israelite leaders the elders have sent him on a diplomatic mission, and he hasn't come back from it.
No.
So David has to go over and above to show it wasn't him.
Yeah.
But really, he should have. Well, let's just say I'm not going to say he should have killed Joab, because he probably technically in that culture he probably should have killed Joab.
Yeah.
He should have said
in the settings that we're in, he should have. At worst, because it was murder. Worst, it would have been banishment.
Well, it was murder, so technically it was,
or at least
stoning.
It should have been.
So, but he let that go.
Yeah.
And the flow-on effect continues, and he actually never gets to the end of his life. Even at the end of his life, he can never kill Joab. He leaves it to Solomon to deal with Joab, but he should have. Somehow he managed to get it across the line, but he really should have killed Joab for the murder of Abner. But at least he did enough to win their hearts through this funeral.
Yeah, and then he even says it's like that Abner was not killed. Now, so Abner, like, he died a death that wasn't just.
It wasn't a military death.
It wasn't a military death. He was murdered.
Asahel had been killed by Abner in a time of war.
Yeah.
Which is a different kind of death to a death in peacetime or a murder.
One that he didn't want to commit either.
And one even in war he didn't want to commit it. This was fully intentional, and this wasn't in war. This was in peacetime, a complete betrayal of trust. Come here, my brother. Come over here.
Bang.
That's betrayal of that's murder.
Yeah.
Premeditated murder.
And then, so then the people wept for Abner. David refused to eat anything on the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to eat. But David had made a vow saying, "May God strike me or even kill me if I eat anything before sundown." So it's just showing again, that above and beyond, that how much that he respected Abner, and again also, and on the other side, that the actions and the way that this happened, that he had to show that this is not what I wanted. This is not, this is nowhere near. Like, why would he have wanted Abner dead? Like, we saw the actions of every other single time that someone died that were apparently bringing good news or things like that. Then here he's like, he sent him on his way safely
to bring peace.
Yeah, and Joab's gone and completely erased that.
Yep.
And again, that political thing, I suppose, that it pleased the people very much. In fact, everything the king did pleased them. So everyone in Judah and all Israel understood that David was not responsible for Abner's murder. Then King David said to his officials, "Do you realize that a great commander has fallen today in Israel? And even though I am the anointed king, these two sons of
Zeruiah,
Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So that may the Lord repay these evil men for their evil deeds.
So there's that. What I was saying.
Yeah,
he felt like they were his kryptonite.
Yeah,
and yet, what should have happened will still carry another 5 years before this ultimately is. Even though the people of Israel are recognizing it, it's still sent this breakdown of relationship.
Yeah.
Let's put it into a modern context. A breakdown of relationship that hasn't been handled amicably has set back the peace process. It's set back the plan of God because of human selfishness and greed.
Yeah.
We have to be so mindful of that and say, Lord, help us not to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, enough for chapter 3.
Yep.
2 to go for this week. Chapter 4 coming up tomorrow. Talk to you then. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?